and here in Israel. As you can see, I'm here on the Mount of Olives, and I'm looking for cracks that you can see actually here in the flooring. If you look at the road over here, you can see that there's cracks that are starting to crack on.
For more than 3,000 years, this ridge east of Jerusalem has watched empires rise and fall. From the prophets of Israel to the disciples of Jesus, the Mount of Olives has stood as a silent witness to triumph, betrayal, and hope. Today, scientists say the earth beneath it is moving. A fault line runs directly beneath this sacred mountain. And for many believers, that movement carries a question of eternity. Could the splitting of this mountain mark the beginning of the end and the return of Christ? The prophecy is as old as the temple ruins themselves. On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will split in two from east to west. Zechariah 14 verse 4. Written over 2,500 years ago, these words described a moment when divine presence would physically reshape the earth. To Zechariah's audience, it symbolized deliverance, a dramatic end to siege and suffering. But to later generations, it became a sign of the Messiah's ultimate return. For centuries, Jewish and Christian scholars alike have wrestled with its meaning. Was Zechariah foretelling an actual geological event, or a vision of spiritual renewal? Today, modern geology offers a surprising layer to that ancient riddle. The Mount of Olives lies directly along the great African-Syrian fault zone, part of a tectonic scar that stretches from Turkey to East Africa. This means the sacred ridge is not only symbolic, it's seismically alive. Over the centuries, earthquakes have shaken Jerusalem. 31 BCE, 363 CE, 1033 CE, 1927 CE. Each tremor left behind fissures, collapsed walls, and legends of divine intervention. Israeli geologists now confirm that a fault line indeed cuts through the Mount of Olives, trending east to west, the exact direction described by the prophet. Coincidence, or convergence of prophecy and physics? The debate continues. The Mount of Olives is more than a viewpoint. It is the most ancient active cemetery in the world. Over 150,000 graves line its face, prophets, rabbis, and pilgrims awaiting resurrection. According to Jewish tradition, when the Messiah comes, resurrection will begin right here. From these stones, the dead will rise first. It is a belief so powerful that for centuries, Jews from across the world have sought burial on this mountain to be closest to redemption. For Christians, the Mount of Olives holds an equally sacred memory, the place where Jesus prayed, ascended, and promised to return. In the book of Acts, chapter 1, the disciples watched Jesus rise into the clouds from this very ridge. Two angels appeared and said, "This same Jesus, who has been taken from you into heaven, will come back in the same way you have seen him go." The prophecy of Zechariah, the promise of Acts, two testimonies separated by 5 centuries, converging on the same location. The Mount of Olives became the point of departure and the expected point of return. For the faithful, it is not just geography, it is destiny. But now, evidence suggests that this destiny may also be geological. In recent decades, Israeli seismologists have conducted detailed surveys beneath Jerusalem's eastern ridge. Their findings reveal fractures, caverns, and dormant fault lines extending directly beneath the Mount of Olives. In 2009, ground-penetrating radar showed movement along these lines, subtle but measurable. Engineers caution that another major quake could strike the region within decades. Yet for theologians, this data echoes something deeper, the idea that physical creation itself may be preparing for divine intervention. Could natural processes be instruments of prophecy? Or are ancient visions poetic expressions of human awe before nature's power? Throughout recorded history, tremors have repeatedly struck this region. The 1927 quake measured 6.2 magnitude, shaking the old city and damaging the dome of the Rock and Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Eyewitnesses reported cracks appearing across the Mount of Olives. A generation later, archaeologists still found displaced stonework along ancient tomb walls. For residents of Jerusalem, the Earth's movements are more than geology. They are reminders that stability here is an illusion. In recent years, the idea of a splitting Mount of Olives has gained renewed attention. Videos of minor landslides or ground shifts quickly circulate online, often labeled as signs of the end. Religious commentators cite Zechariah 14. Scientists point to the Jordan Rift. Each interprets the same evidence through a different lens. For some, faith explains the science. For others, science explains the faith. Yet both acknowledge one fact. Beneath this holy ground, something is indeed moving. Life around the Mount of Olives continues much as it has for centuries. Pilgrims climb its paths, unaware that a tectonic fault lies beneath their feet. For believers, the mountain's destiny rests not in seismographs, but in Scripture. For scientists, Scripture may reflect a people's ancient awareness of the land's volatility. Between faith and geology lies the mystery that keeps the Mount of Olives central in the world's imagination. Whether read as prophecy or prediction, the Mount of Olives remains a meeting point between heaven and earth, a ridge where theology and tectonics intertwine. Its story invites a larger question. Is the shaking of the earth a warning, or a whisper of what was always meant to be? Beneath the quiet slopes of the Mount of Olives lies a labyrinth of tombs and tunnels. Every layer of limestone tells a story: prophets, pilgrims, earthquakes, and rebuilding. Archaeologists have found fractures that slice cleanly through burial corridors. Some date these cracks to the Great Quake recorded in 31 BCE, the same event that Josephus said shook the temple's foundations. The mountain's interior resembles a book written by the earth itself, its sentences interrupted by sudden violent punctuation. Modern mapping reveals that the mount stands atop the Jerusalem segment of the Dead Sea Transform, a fault system stretching 1,000 kilometers. Instruments detect microtremors weekly, imperceptible to the human ear, but proof that the plates beneath Israel and Arabia are still in motion. Medieval monks wrote of a night when the lamps of the holy city danced. Islamic chroniclers recorded that the hill east of Al-Quds cracked, and dust rose like smoke. Though separated by faith, their testimonies align. Jerusalem shakes roughly once each millennium with devastating force. Science explains the strain of tectonic plates. Theology explains the strain of expectation. Each discipline studies pressure, one beneath the crust, the other within the human soul. Israeli emergency services now rank a 6 to 7 magnitude quake in the next century as inevitable. Buildings are reinforced, yet the psychological tremor is already here. What if the next rupture coincides with the ancient prophecy that names this mountain by name? In 2023, small fissures opened near the southern flank after winter rains. Scientists called them seasonal, pilgrims called them reminders. Once again, cameras turned toward the Mount of Olives asking, "Is this it?" Zechariah foretold a day when the Lord would stand upon the mount, splitting it east to west. The prophet described valleys forming, pathways of escape and deliverance. In the New Testament, angels assure the disciples that this same Jesus will return in like manner. 2 covenants, 1 geography. Some theologians interpret the splitting metaphorically, a moral division between belief and rebellion. Others insist it will be literal, a seismic event marking divine descent. Between symbolism and stone lies the enduring mystery of apocalyptic language, visions that speak both to heaven and to history. No other city concentrates prophecy, politics, and plate tectonics so tightly. Here, the physical and the spiritual continually collide. The Mount of Olives stands as the hinge between east and west, life and resurrection, science and faith. Whether the mountain's fracture comes through natural forces or divine timing, its meaning endures. That upheaval precedes renewal, that shaking exposes foundations, and that faith looks beyond the fault line. The Mount of Olives still waits, ancient, silent, restless. Beneath its stones, the earth holds tension. Above them, believers hold expectation. One speaks in tremors, the other in prayer. Between the two lies the question that has stirred hearts for 2 millennia. When the mountain finally splits, will humanity be ready for the one who returns?